Ladies, gentlemen, boys, and girls, welcome to another very special interview episode of Metal Gear Mondays, the Games Club style podcast covering all things Metal Gear from top to bottom, left to right, inside and out, in pseudo-historical recreational order. As always, I'm your host, Alessio Summerfield, and this week I'm joined by Samuel Wright.
It's me, Big Tony.
I'm joined by Large Tony.
Big Tony.
And we're also joined by Dean Scofield coming up on this
Scofield
interview, which is going to be great. That was the most rock-solid intro I've done in a long time.
It was. I'm sorry that I ruined it with my Big Tony. My Big Tony stuff.
Oops.
Had I only known this was going to be your one.
Had I only known I don't know.
Oh.
I ruined that pun pretty
Had
well.
I only Nino Cooney.
No, I'm really excited for this interview, Sam. I think,
it's a very good interview. So I am not a part of the interview.
Yeah, it happened during lunch break. Don't tell anybody. I took a long lunch and I went and I recorded this.
Hey, don't tell nobody. Big Tony's gonna make you sleep with the fishes. All right.
But no, I took a long lunch and I hung out with the dean and we did Uber conference. So this one's another phone one, kind of like the Quentin Flynn. I thought the audio quality was pretty great though.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah,
it's very. I could listen to Dean Scofield talk about the business for hours. Honestly, I could have listened to that interview for another 2 hours.
Yeah, he did a very good job.
Yeah, he's got so much insight because he's been doing it for such a long time, and he's just got a lot of insight. He had very similar insight to Cam Clark, who's also been doing it for such a long time. So it's it's very interesting. And if you guys don't know who Dean Scofield is, within the context of our podcast walls here, he of course played the one and only Johnny Sasaki in the first 2 Metal Gear Solid games.
Yeah.
Did not play him in 4.
Which is super, it's weird. So he didn't even get offered the role in 4, which you guys will hear about. But it's weird that we did this interview on the same day that we interviewed somebody else that you guys will be hearing soon. Should we say, Sam?
I don't know. Should we say it?
Let's say it. We also interviewed Debbie Mae West. So we got to talk to Johnny and Meryl on the same day. So I thought that was... the scheduling just happened to shake out that way. I don't think either of them planned it. We actually had to shift dates for both of them, so they just landed on the same day. But yeah, Dean's done a lot of stuff. I want to talk about this stuff really quickly. So he played Fred, a character in Archie Bunker's Place from 1979 to 1980.
And he's got a lot of really great insight about that character and what it did for his career too.
Right. Yeah, he was in a TV series called Eden. He was in Saved by the Bell, the college years in particular. He was in Hill Street Blues. He was in Days of Our Lives. He's been in a lot of stuff, but what's interesting is I think Metal Gear is literally the only video game he's ever been in. So, and that comes up quite a bit, which is pretty neat. Also, one thing to note, when Dean went by, so this is never been officially confirmed, but when Dean went by Dean is not his legal name. It is his acting name, though. But he went by Dino in his acting roles for the most part. So you'll see a lot of his early roles say Dino. That is actually the name that appears in Metal Gear Solid for Johnny as sort of the, and we talked about this when we covered the game, but as sort of the alias name that is not the union name.
To avoid getting in trouble.
Yeah, and that's actually his legal name. So depending on
name.
If that
Dino Scofield, man, come
which
on.
is pretty amazing. Yeah, I love it. But he's great, man. This guy is fucking phenomenal to listen to. I did not know about. You guys will learn about some weird medical stuff in this episode. I did not know about any of that. It's weird going into this. Not to downplay Dean because he's a stellar human being, but going into this knowing that I was about to talk to somebody who, for all intents and purposes, is kind of like a background character in these games, I wasn't quite sure what to think of kind of how the discussion was going to play out. And so I was super excited that Dean had so much awesome stuff to talk about and just happened to be just such a really cool, rich wonderful individual that this conversation kind of starts in Metal Gear territory and then
Yeah.
goes into some crazy places. And I think it's actually like one of the
Yeah,
most
it like
interesting
starts off
interviews we've done. It's great.
there's like the Metal Gear stuff is that's out of the way, like right up top. And then you just get to listen to just this journey. You get to go on this journey with this guy who's not only like he's like old school in the coolest way possible, and just like hearing his story, and he's a great storyteller too. So it's such a great interview, and I think you guys are gonna enjoy it a lot.
Yeah, I'm excited. Sam, before we dive into the interview, we should probably do our little plug action, as well as let people know what's coming next week. I guess we already did. So Debbie's coming next week. But yeah, we've been recording so much of these so out of order. If you want the chronological, true world experience version of the podcast release schedule, you should patronize us and give us your money.
Damn.
If you go to patreon.com/Metal Gear Mondays, you can get all these things relatively shortly after we record them.
Yeah, I
I
think
think
there were 4 episodes that came out at the exact same time.
yeah.
Basically, they were 4, like, so the Patreon folks had 4 episodes to listen to within the same day.
Yeah. So I try to, as we record, just get them pre-edited. That way I could just kind of schedule it out and not worry about it. And so I was able to just like crank out 4 of them in a day
Yeah.
the other day. So yeah, you should definitely, and it is for as little as $2 a month, you get all the episodes early. For $1 a month, you get access to our Discord and you get a discount from our store, but you also do get some episodes early. So like usually it's the first episode of every season. Sometimes it's like, I think when we did the Cam Clark episode, I was just so excited that we got our first interview that I just went ahead and made that public for all the patrons. So just things like that. You'll get special episodes every once in a while at $1. But
And the other thing about $2 is that we also have a second podcast that we do called the Patriot Club, where we just talk about whatever the hell we want. What do we talk about on the last one that we recorded? I remember we talked about fucking mumble rap and
Red Dead,
and we revealed our biggest gaming sins about games that like are critically and like acclaimed that we just cannot get into. Well, I say we. Alessio forgot his.
Yeah, well, and then I remembered and texted it to him the next day like a weasel.
It was very sketch, but yeah, check out for $2 you can listen to that episode of the podcast and hear mine. It's kind of I'm worried. I was worried about it. I was worried about saying it. It's the first time I've ever said it out loud.
Aw. No, I think you'll be fine. And also if you want to look at the higher tiers, we also have like a $10 tier where you get a whole bunch of video content. We do Let's Play videos. We do thank you videos. We do every once in a while we'll do some random videos. I think I put up like a 45-minute DJ set one day, which I'm hoping to do some more soon. I'm actually getting some new music equipment in the next like month, so maybe that'll be more recurring. But yeah, we do a lot of great stuff. We're on the cusp. I think $250 is like the tier mark for us to hit, to kind of get some new pieces of equipment we've been putting our eyes on and even kind of open things up a little bit more. And we're right on the cusp of that. So if anybody wants to jump in, join in, help push us over, all of that money gets used for the show. And yeah, I mean, any game or movie that we're covering for the show, we have money to afford it thanks to you guys. So, and we're also able to interview people and go on trips to Seattle for conventions thanks to you guys. So, thanks, patrons.
I think by the time you hear this, that will have been done, right?
Yeah, there should be a video, and there will be there'll probably be, let me put it this way, there will probably be like a 1 to 2 minute video for public. There will probably be a much longer video for patrons, and there will definitely be a special like live episode of Metal Gear Mondays from Renton City Retro that will eventually go out to the public feed, but will definitely be a patron thing for a little bit.
And then we also will have recorded another interview while everybody is in Seattle, so it'll be very cool.
Yeah, at least one other interview. There might be more.
We don't know.
Yeah, we'll find out when we get there.
Yay!
But
Alessio, where can they find you on the internet?
ACSummerfield.com and MetalGearMondays.com.
Yay! MetalGearMondays.com is where you can go to find literally everything social media wise, especially our YouTube. Listen, we exist. Time is a flat circle. We exist outside of time and space at this point, so we have no idea. I'm not even going to pretend like I have any idea what our subscriber count is at the moment that you are hearing this on the public feed. But I'm going to say it anyway. We need 100 subscribers to get a custom URL. So if you guys want to bump us up on there, you can find the link on our website, or just type in Metal Gear Mondays, and it's going to be the one called Metal Gear Mondays.
Yeah, I think it's like one of the only, like, I think we, due to sheer volume of quality content that I've been uploading in the last few days, I do believe we're like the only thing that permeates those listings.
It's basically, and what we're planning on doing is, we talked about the Let's Plays that we have on our Patreon. We recorded a full series of Metal Gear Solid 1 for the PlayStation 1.
It's very funny.
It is very funny. And we're going to be recording, as we're recording this, we're going to be recording our series of Metal Gear. And then our goal is, once we've recorded that full series of Metal Gear, we're going to post the Metal Gear Solid series. We're just kind of like do like a weekly drip or like a couple daily drip or however we're going to schedule it on our YouTube channel. And then we'll record another game that we have not determined yet, and then release Metal Gear, and it's going to go on like that. So check out the YouTube. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, I think a fun one to do might be, because like not a lot of people have access to it, might be to do like the English version of Snatcher or Police Knots after Metal Gear.
Yeah, I think Tori had talked about that, right?
Yeah, so that way people could experience it. Speaking of experiencing Police Knots, I sold a hacked PS1 Classic with Police Knots on it to Matt Smith. Thank you, Matt Smith.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It was very good. I mailed that out today. So
nice.
By the time he's hearing this, he probably has it. So congratulations, sir.
Hey, Matt.
Yeah, we should probably get into this interview after.
Yeah, before we forget, you can find me on Twitter at Sandal. That's SANJUUL. You already knew that.
Hooray!
But so yeah, enjoy Alessio's conversation with Dean Scofield.
Yeah, and ladies and gentlemen, I present you an American treasure. One of my favorite people that I've talked to in a very long time, Dean Scofield.
Woo!
Yeah, I love that man. Dean, I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time to chat. I was going through your IMDb and just kind of checking everything that I check before we get interviews started.
Of course.
And I noticed that Metal Gear Solid 1 and Metal Gear Solid 2 are the only video game credits that you have based on what I could find.
The casting director who used to be at Hanna-Barbera many, many years prior.
And you're talking about Chris Zimmerman, is that right?
Chris Zimmerman, exactly. She'd been at Hanna-Barbera as their casting director, and so I've known her through that for many years. There was a very old animation pilot called Fish Police.
Okay.
Which I did the original temps for, and so I've known her for a long time. So she was the one that brought me in to do Metal Gear Solid, and so that's how I got into that thing. That why there wasn't a whole lot prior to that or since. Because when I get calls, usually it's to do hundreds of voices that are mostly just atmospheric voices, like, the rest of the army screaming and yelling as they're coming down the hill or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
They're not so specific.
Gotcha. Is that sort of how this started? Did this start as you just kind of being, because like within the game itself, you are kind of just like another one of the sort of people involved with like all the other soldiers, but you just happen to stand out because you have these isolated scenes. Is that how this started, or were you always?
No, I mean, you're talking about for my career. You're talking about in this game specifically.
Oh, specifically in this game.
In this game, no, I got hired to do Johnny Sasaki.
Okay.
But then, see, the way the union rules are, they can hire you to do a single voice and still ask you to do other voices. Mm-hmm. I think you're allowed to do 3 voices that are specific without having to sign another contract or get paid more.
Mm-hmm.
So, no, I was there to do Johnny, and then while I was there, they said, let's just do some other voices too.
Oh, nice. So you
So
do
that's what it was.
you do some additional voices for
Yeah,
other.
mostly again crowd type of stuff, not so specific as Johnny was.
Gotcha. Do you remember any of those lines from sort of the general kind
I
of soldier lines?
really don't. It was such a long time ago, and
Totally.
yeah. I mean, I just remember it being a lot of fun, and really being surprised that there was any fan base specific to Johnny. I was actually at a friend's graduation from acting school, and sitting next to a young man. We were just, casually chatting, and when he heard that I had done the voice of Johnny Sasaki, you would have thought I was a superstar as far as he was concerned. I was shocked myself. I was like, "Hey, listen. I mean, I'm glad you like it, but
Yeah. Well, you're on the right show then, because I feel like we've got quite a captive audience when it comes to some of the weirdest aspects of this game series. So I think that's awesome.
no, it was very cool. I was surprised, and it was from that I ended up looking up, and then somebody contacted me through LinkedIn from England, who had actually taken some stills out of the game itself and sent them to me because he wanted me to sign them.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
I was like, okay, sure,
That's very cool.
It's easy enough. Whatever you want. You want to send it to me, sure.
Very cool. Well, and with Metal Gear kind of being a little bit of an outlier, as sort of like some of the only video games that I was able to find sort of in your portfolio, had you done voiceover work prior to this? I'm assuming
Well,
so.
I had started doing voiceover work in 1990. No, 1983.
Okay.
So, I mean, I'd gone to classes and done it and had worked at doing different voice work, but most of my voice work had been prior to this game, had been in commercials or other things that, where I was just the voice of like an announcer type of a thing. But again, because of Chris and because I had done work for her at Hanna-Barbera in the past and had auditioned and she liked my work, she called me in specifically for this.
Gotcha.
So that's why I got into this job.
Very cool. Yeah, and I didn't realize just how far-reaching Chris's involvement has sort of been with the whole series, because I knew that she had worked on the first game, but I think from just talking to folks like Cam and folks like just Quentin Flynn that we just recently talked to, and I know we're going to be talking to Debbie Mae West actually later today.
Yeah.
Just from like correspondence back and forth, it's like it seems like Chris has sort of had her hands in like most of the series up until
Well,
sort of
I
recent
think
years.
the production company, they really liked the way she brought things about. So, and that's usually the way it is with most projects, particularly if there's going to be sequels, that if they're happy with what happened in whatever the first one was, they'll usually try to keep the same team, not necessarily the same actors, but at least the same working team, like someone like Chris, on board because they know she's going to deliver.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm assuming that sort of the Japanese company Conscript's kind of an American company, I'm assuming based out of LA, to handle sort of the production side of things when it comes to sort of these English
I don't know
voice
who
actors.
did because the people that I met were all from Japan, from where the thing was coming from. I mean, the clients, when they came out to the recording session and sitting in the booth in the control room, they were all from there. They were not from LA.
Gotcha. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, we were sort of lucky enough to also be able to talk to a fellow named Jeremy Blaustein, who not only worked for Konami in Japan, but also was involved in sort of not only adapting the script to English, but I believe he was also assisting Chris during the voice session. So it's been interesting kind of getting a little piece of the puzzle
Right.
for what happened in that studio like 25 years later.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way it is with a lot of foreign content. I mean, even a lot of things that I have revoiced, like for German series and like that, there's usually somebody that has been assigned to do the translation. And the translations aren't necessarily always perfectly exact, because a lot of times what it is they'll try to figure out something that'll fit into the movement of the mouth. Because you've got things, particularly if you're using live action, when you've got labials, when you've got lips moving in a particular way, a word that might be specific to the English compared to the language it came from may not fit in the way the mouth is moving. So they'll try to find something else that might work, still keeping the idea of the content the same without trying to change that. But the word itself, if somebody was trying to do an exact translation, you go, that's not what that word meant, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, because I've seen that. My mother is French, and sometimes we'll see a French foreign film, and she'll say, "Yeah, that's not what they said."
Very nice.
So, you know, it's just.
Did you have a picture to play to whenever you were voicing Johnny originally, or even in the second game? Did they give you anything to look at?
No, we just what it is Chris, as the director, sits in the booth, and then she, with the clients, have an idea of what needs to happen, and then they'll kind of give us that scenario or say, okay, this is what's happening, so you need to have this type of excitement, or you're shouting to so-and-so or something like that, so they know what's going on. But no, we don't see anything, so we're not trying to literally sync what we're saying into a cartoon movement.
Nice.
Of a character, you know?
Yeah, no, that's fantastic.
They'll all fix that in post.
Yeah. How did they did they paint a picture of Johnny to you before you got involved? Did they tell you were going to be knocked unconscious and stripped naked?
No, not before I got involved. It's actually while you're doing it. They say, okay, now here Johnny's doing this, and you need to do it. Okay, we need to have that type of excitement. It's what's happening to you right here and right now, and then you just go for it, and then they decide if we're giving them the attitude and the sound that they're looking for that particular moment in the game.
Nice. Do you remember? Was there anything special that you had to do to make yourself sound like you had a cold that day?
No, I mean that's just a regular, you know, vocal technique. You just make yourself sound a little more stuffed up. You know, kind of, you know, how to place your voice where a little bit further back in the throat, where you can kind of close off your nose so that it doesn't sound like you're breathing so easily.
Nice. Did you have? I know. It seems like most of this stuff happens pretty isolated, kind of. It's just you guys in a booth, and maybe you're hearing folks giving you direction, and that's about it. I mean, did you happen to have any sort of interactions with any of the voice cast?
No, they don't
like
bring us in.
that?
I mean, like The Simpsons, for instance. When The Simpsons is done, that was one of the few shows where they actually brought everybody into a large soundstage all at the same time, and they were in isolation booths that had windows on them, like glass, so they could actually see the other characters that they were playing, the other actors that they were playing with. And so they could have more of a spontaneous interaction while they're going through the script. But it's very rare that they do that. More often than not, they do like they did with this video game and other video games that I've done for like kid games. You just go into the booth by yourself. Somebody tells you what the attitude is, and this is what we need here, and then you just go for it. You don't have anybody to react to. You have no idea how it's going to sound, whether it really is going to sound exactly like you would hope if you were in a room with somebody actually conversing, you know? So, no, it's all very isolated. You hope that the description that they're giving you of the moment is good enough so that your acting skills and your ability to translate what they're saying into something that when they actually match it to the other character will sound like it's normal dialogue.
Perfect. Yeah. Did you So did you know any of your co-stars prior to? Because it sounds like you still know some of them relatively well.
Well, some of them I know. Like Cam Clark and I have been friends since 1983.
Very nice.
So we've known each other a very long time, and we were even actually at the original audition at the same time. So, you know, yeah, and there's also some of these other guys. We're all kind of in the same world a bit. So when you're in the voiceover world, you're going to run into a number of the same people again and again. And so you'll know who they are just because you've either worked with them or you know of their work. But Cam was really the only one in that show that I had a friendship with prior to doing the job.
That makes sense. Did you I guess, did you end up ever kind of going through and kind of seeing how the work paid off for the final product once everything had come out, or did you just sort of move on to the next thing and kind of forget about it until it blipped back on your radar years later?
I'm sorry, I missed. Suddenly one of my TVs decided to go on, and I had to go, what's going on here? I had to go turn that off, so I didn't get to hear your last question. I apologize.
Oh no, you're totally fine. I just wanted to. I was curious. Did you end up like once the finished product had released? Did you end up checking it out of curiosity to see kind of how the finished product came together, or was it just one of the situations where you're kind of on to the next?
They sent me a copy of the game. They did do that, but I didn't have a PlayStation to view it on. Actually, I never got to actually see it. Actually, the gentleman that I talked to you about that was from London that wanted to send me pictures to be signed, that was the first time I'd actually seen how the image even looked.
Oh,
and
wow.
then later, I went on like YouTube and looked it up and was like, oh, okay, that's what it was.
That's awesome. That's really weird. That's cool. Yeah,
yeah, because it's not like doing a film where you're going to get to see dailies or anything like that. There's so much lag time between the time you actually lay the voices to the time they finish the animation or sync it all up. And then again, delivering me the game was very nice, but it's like, well, if I don't have the console to play it on.
Yeah, what am I going to do with this? How
Right,
do
exactly.
you know how far in advance you guys recorded your lines? Was it because I think the game came out if I think it's like September of '98 or something like that. Do you remember if it was that year? Was it the year before?
I don't specifically remember, but I know in general for most animation, it usually takes about 9 months. So it's very likely that we did it that year, but like in January or February of that year when we did the actual recording.
Okay.
Because that's usually the lag time between doing. I know that's how it was when I was doing the temp stuff for Fish Police with Hanna-Barbera. It took 9 months for them to take the voices that I had already done in the script and actually animate it.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. How much time had passed before Chris called you back up and said, "We want you to come back for Metal Gear Solid 2"?
I don't remember it being very long. I mean, usually companies will make a decision based on how well the first game sells. And if they sell enough units and they realize that there might be a demand for a continuation or a sequel, that's usually when suddenly the calls will go out. I mean, I've certainly done things in the past where you've done something and you think, oh, they love you to death, and then they replace you.
Yeah,
and you go,
exactly.
well, why? Well, you liked what I did before. You used me for several episodes, but now you're not going to do this because you just changed your mind. You just never know, and you never really are given a reason other than they just go, no, they just didn't use you.
Yeah, and so I guess that kind of jumps to a question that I did have. Like, do you recall ever even being approached for being Johnny again in Metal Gear Solid 4 in 2008? Because he has a massive role in that game, and I always found it odd that they went with somebody else.
Yeah, I actually did not get contacted and was kind of surprised because I was available. But see, that might have nothing to do with Chris. That might have something more to do with the client, the guys that created the game, what they wanted different. I'm not sure what that was. It was never expressed to me. You just don't get the call. You just go, okay. That's kind of the way the game's played as far as the acting world in general, and definitely in the voiceover world. I mean, you just go, okay, we're doing something else. All right, fine.
Right. Did anybody ever tell you what happens to your character in Metal Gear Solid 4?
No.
Ooh. Do you mind if I tell you super quickly?
No, not at all. Go ahead.
It's very funny. So the the girl that you're lusting over in Metal Gear Solid 1 all those years ago, this is insane. You marry her.
Wow.
So good on Johnny.
Yeah.
And that's one of the most surreal things that I think I can put down in my journal of things that have happened in my life is I get to tell a guy whose voice I've heard since I was like 13 what happens to your character.
Yeah, that I actually accomplished my goal.
Yeah, congratulations. That's
pretty
insane.
cool.
Yeah, it's very weird.
One of the things that I always laughed about when we did it is because one of the traits of Johnny, of course, is that anytime he panics, he has to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
So that always struck me as funny, particularly when he was trying in the first game, trying to pursue this girl. Anytime she would give him any sort of attention, he would get so nervous he'd have to rush off to the restroom. And I thought, oh boy, it made me laugh.
Yeah, it's pretty good, and the sound effects, like the effect work that happened in post for your stomach churning, is still something we all laugh about.
Again, I've only seen clips that somebody has bothered to put up on YouTube or something, but. Yeah, it always made me laugh. It's like, boy.
That's crazy. Well, and I was actually really surprised while I was digging into your career, because your name had definitely been on our radar for quite some time, mainly because we've been slowly trying to have as many conversations as we can, not just with the voice talent, but like anybody who had anything to do with that first game. And obviously, like, the pool is pretty small on the American side, and there are so many people in Japan who may or may not even speak English. So we've been kind of working our way through that list, and finally, when I got to you, I was doing a little research, and I actually had no idea that you were in like an Archie Bunker spinoff show for a really long time.
For a very long time, and that was actually, I played one of the very first gay characters on television.
Oh, wow.
Billy Crystal was the only other one that was on television kind of at the same time playing a gay character. He was on Soap.
Okay.
And I actually ran into him once because playing that character, which was loads of fun, and the people I got to meet was amazing. You know, Sammy Davis Jr., all these other major old stars that I got to meet and work with, which I loved. And Annie Mira, who played my aunt on the show, you know who she is?
That name is super familiar.
Well, Ben Stiller's mother.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yep.
Okay. She and her husband had been an old comedy team from the 60s called Stiller and Mira.
Okay.
And they were on, like, you know, Hollywood Palace, all those shows of the 60s when they had the comedians, and she was great. And working with her, she played my aunt on the show. I loved her to death. She was so nice and so considerate to me as a brand new actor, suddenly working with all these old time stars who, you know, had been around the block more than once. And here I was, this young punk kid coming in and trying to get my feet under all this. And she was the only one that really took the time to let me know when I was doing a good job or to keep me feeling comfortable in that environment. I loved her to death. But the show was amazing. Playing a gay character, however, was not a great choice at that time.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. I mean, so, and not to get super deep into your personal life, but do you identify as gay in real life or?
No, not at all. Matter of fact, I asked the producers at the time, why did you go after me instead of, because I knew there were other gay men that had gone on audition. And the thing is, while this would be considered kind of non-PC now, because my approach to the character was to be much more flamboyant in a stereotypical way that when somebody's making fun.
Right.
And that's actually what they said. They said, well, you know, you made fun of, hold on one second.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It said you were willing to make fun of the character. Everybody else was busy trying to protect the image instead of, you know, being like, hello. They wanted to be more straight, more
just
straight, like, literally
realistic.
In the sense of what it was. And I was willing to play the flamboyant side of it because that was my idea of gay men at that time.
Right. As I'm sure also many other folks as well, like people who might be tuning in, for instance.
And that's kind of what got me the job, was my willingness to ridicule myself, to play a stereotypical style, which now would be very non-PC.
Right.
But at the time, nobody thought twice about it, and that's what they said. They said, yeah, you were funnier because you played what people, particularly what straight people, think of when they're trying to portray gay characters, particularly gay men, was the whole flamboyancy. And, you know,
it's almost
one of my lines in that show, one of my first lines, I'll never forget, he goes, I'll be here with bells on. You know, so.
Yeah. It's almost like kind of like the way Andy Kaufman portrayed like a foreigner in Taxi.
Right, exactly. You want to take it to that kind of absurd side.
That's crazy. I'd been somewhat unfamiliar.
It cost me many years of non-work when my character was released from that show, because the writers didn't know where to go with that character. And they finally they sent my character off to law school. Thinking, that's going to be acceptable. But then following that, for about 5 years, I could barely get work because everybody knew me from that show. And I was told quite often by producers, you were that gay guy. We can't lose any shows, anybody turning off the TV of our show because they don't want to see a gay guy. I said, well, I'm not gay, and I'm not playing another gay character. I'm an actor playing a character. I said, yeah, well, we just can't take the risk.
Oh, man, that's wild. Well, and you were only, 21 when you started on Archie Bunker's Place?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was very young.
So had you worked sort of more in film prior to kind of making that big break, or was it sort of like your big
No, that
first
was
role?
kind of it. I'd done a little bit of extra work prior to that, but I was, had an agent, was going out, and that was the big break, as it were. And then after that, I did some soap opera, did General Hospital and some other things, but that was really the thing that launched me into saying, oh, acting is what I do now.
Gotcha.
I mean, I'd done some plays and things like that, but that was the first TV thing. Actually, that's not quite true. I had done a show, what they call a backdoor pilot, and what that means is when a show, like a movie of the week, is created with the idea that this can be a standalone movie of the week, but the producers are also going to submit it to the network to hopefully become an episodic show.
I see.
That's why they call them a backdoor pilot, because they're being used for one thing, but they're also trying to get it in for something else, rather than just a straight pilot, which they just shoot it as is, and then they submit that to the network, and the network makes a decision on it right then and there, whether it's ever going to be picked up or not. And so the general audience may never see it. When they do a backdoor pilot, I did a backdoor pilot. It was called Cotton Candy for Ron Howard. He was directing. And so he had already sold the concept of this movie of the week. So it was going to air no matter what. And then he was trying to pitch it also as a series, which it did not get picked up on.
Gotcha. And you had been in that prior to Archie Bunker's Place?
Yes, just prior, like 6 months earlier.
Oh, wow. Did you and your agent have any discussions about whether or not you depicting this character for Archie Bunker's Place would put sort of obstacles in your way, or was that something that you guys hadn't even thought of?
I know it was a bit of a concern, but no, there was no guidance there. It was just like, hey, you got a big job, take the job.
Right. Yeah, that's crazy.
So but when you think of it just from a social timeline, and you look at something like later, like Will and Grace, for instance, right?
Right.
Now, the guy that plays Will in that show, he's straight, but nobody would think twice about hiring him for a straight job or for another job. But that has to do with society, how it has changed in its acceptance of the idea of that. Like, I ran into Billy Crystal at a Farm Aid thing once, and I talked to him about being on soap. And I was talking to him, and I said, God, it's really affected my career. It's kind of cut my ability to get work because people are like, oh, you play that gay character. I said, how did it work for you? He said, are you kidding? He said, I'm a stand-up. I got to go back to New York and just do stand-up.
Oh, that makes sense.
So, and he had also a really top management team, too. He said, so, I was being hired as the funny guy, because that's how most people knew me. Yes, they knew me from soap, but they weren't always connecting me that way because of how popular his career had been in New York as a stand-up comedian. So he had that to fall back on, literally. And he said, no, I didn't have any of that stigma, but it also took a few years for me to get back into the mainstream of film and television. So I'm sure there was some stigma attached, but it went away quickly because of his other job.
Right.
And I didn't have that sort of a thing to fall back on, like another craft that was popular enough that could put me back in the mainstream. They go, oh, yeah, he's great. He's a funny guy, And they just knew me as an actor who portrayed this gay character. They said, oh, well, we can't have gay characters, because they said, I literally had, back in the early 80s, they were going to do a spin-off of Knight Rider. Only instead of the car, the character of Kit.
Yeah.
They're going to have a motorcycle. Yeah, they're very creative.
Right.
It was still going to be Knight Industries. You're still part of the same company, but this now is going to be a talking motorcycle.
So it's like Chips meets Knight Rider.
Right. And so I met with the producers because they were going to give me the show. And then the president at the time of Universal pulled me aside. He's looking at my resume, and he said, really nice to meet you. As I'm walking out the door, he says, listen, I want to tell you why I'm not going to hire you.
Oh, no.
I said, what? He said, yeah, I think you should know, because you're not going to get this job. They actually gave the job to Leif Garrett.
Oh, wow.
But he said, listen, you played this gay character on a top 10 show. People know you as that gay guy. And I have like 6 episodes to see whether my new show is going to be a hit or a flop, and whether we're not going to pick it up at all. He said, I can't waste one of those episodes in the Nielsen ratings for somebody turning off their TV because they don't want to see you.
That's crazy. I mean, but at the same time, like that's the kind of logic these guys apply, right? Like they're just trying to,
well, it's all
least
you can get
friction.
around. It's all analytics.
Right.
So it's about the numbers, and so if they don't see the numbers, the show is not captivating. Well, see, you got to remember that all shows, particularly then, they're making their money off of commercials.
Right.
So
it's not like an HBO show.
Ratings mean so much because the more people that are watching that they can prove are watching means the more exposure those commercials are going to have to an audience.
It almost creates like a catch-22.
Trying to sell you soap, they want to know that there's going to be at least 1 million people watching that show. Not just 1 million. I mean, when they're talking like 17 million, crazy numbers.
Right.
And otherwise, the network can't justify charging the money that they charge for commercial time. For those 30 or 60 seconds that break up shows that we get all huffy about because they break it always at a scene that you're like, oh, this is good, and now it's got to watch a commercial.
Yeah.
Well, the advertiser will want to know that there's going to be enough people watching it that might buy their product. And the network needs to be able to say, well, the reason we're charging you, $1 million for 30 seconds is because we can deliver you several million people to watch your show, to watch your commercial. And and that's why those guys make those decisions. That's why this guy said, listen, I can't take the risk that TVs will not be staying on because they know you as the gay character. So even though I wasn't going to be playing a gay character in this new show, it didn't matter. They weren't looking at me as an actor. They were looking at me as, how does the audience perceive you if they know you?
Right. Yeah, that's wild. I think it almost creates this weird catch-22 where it's like society itself has to become more open before the shows can do that, but the shows are also influencing the people watching the show. Do you know what I mean? It's like weird.
No, exactly. There's this kind of merry-go-round of a cyclical idea of, is it the chicken or the egg that has to change?
Right.
No, you're absolutely right. But that's why I said, like, if you take a show like the gentleman that plays Will in Will and Grace, well, he is a straight guy playing a gay character, but he can go on to do and has gone on to do other straight roles, and nobody thought twice about it. But that has to do now much more with, the popularity of the show, and also, yes, you're right, that society has, changed a bit in its understanding of what's going on, that the person is playing a character in this, it's funny in this, and so we appreciate his work as opposed to trying to stereotype him based on the character he plays as if and that's the other thing, when you start getting fan mail, like when I would get fan mail from doing that show, sometimes it would be scary. You'd look at the stuff I was like, they think this guy is real.
Oh no.
I would get letters thanking me for doing this, and because I've given them the courage to come out of their closets, to be able to talk about other people. And you go, well, that's great. I'm glad that I'm doing that, but that wasn't the intention of the character.
Right.
That's not what the plot line is in this particular episode of Archie's Place.
Right. That's crazy.
There's almost like a disconnect where they believe that what they're seeing is real. So you think that they wouldn't because they realize it's on their TV and that it's just a teleplay. But no, people really invest to the point where they have convinced themselves that they know this person. There's a familiarity sometimes from audiences that just go, why would you think that? You don't really know me.
Yeah. Well, and the same thing, I mean, I feel like it's weird now because it's almost like there's a little less of a wall, but you've got like people on YouTube or podcasters or people that are streaming their life 24/7 or whatever.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah, and everybody just thinks they're friends now. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. No, absolutely. I mean, I was shocked I think it was like a season ago, when one of the stars on Dancing with the Stars was just this YouTube person.
Yeah.
Just this young guy that had been putting a lot of stuff. He had a lot of likes or whatever, people that are followers, I guess, is what they call it. And he goes, and me as an actor and being my craft and sitting home watching television going, this guy's a star now? Because what he did, But, it's true. The social side of things, some of these things, and the ability, on one hand, it's great because there is access to make yourself and whatever your niche or your thing is be known and have people go, yeah, I want to learn more about this, or I want to follow this to understand it, whether it's girls applying makeup or, Justin Bieber playing his music and then getting a contract,
Right.
So,
or a bunch of guys sitting around talking about Metal Gear.
But the fact that it's available and that there are these outlets now that you have opportunities. It's not just completely dependent upon Hollywood to make these decisions about who's going to make it and who's not. I think is pretty cool, and it's pretty great that it's available.
Yeah. I was going to ask you actually. Did you move to LA to get struck by lightning in the rainstorm, or are you originally
born and raised out here?
Oh, okay.
So this is my home. I got into acting on a dare. This is back in the late 70s. The stage show of Grease had come out here from Broadway, and Adrian Zemed, if you know who he is as an actor, he did a lot. He was like T.J. Hooker and a bunch of other shows.
Yeah.
He was the young, good-looking, dark-haired guy.
Okay.
He was playing Danny Zuko, which is the lead of Grease, if you're familiar with the show. And he was leaving to do his first Hollywood television series with Betty White, I think it was. Anyway, so he was very excited. He was leaving the show, so they were holding auditions for Grease to be the new replacements for all the different characters that were leaving. And Danny Zuko, the lead character, which Adrian played, was one of those characters. I was going to USC at the time. This is back in the 70s. And my friends, even though I was in the business department or had come from the business department, most of my friends were all in the drama department because they were a lot more fun to hang out with. So the union rules for equity is that when shows have auditions, they actually have to have what they call an open call, which means that anybody who wants to show up can show up and audition. This is how they get new people into the union, and new people can have their breaks. So because of an open call, you obviously have a lot more people showing up, not just people submitted by agents, and you're waiting in a long line. So we got there at like 6 a.m. at the Pantages Theater in Hollywood, sitting on the sidewalk, and they didn't start seeing the men until about 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Oh, man.
So we'd already been waiting in line for like 9 hours, and I'd gone with all my acting friends, just keep them company, thought it was fun to see what it's all about. And one thing that actors and actresses, particularly in schools, can do, are known well for doing, is complain. And one of the things they were complaining about is how unfair this was, that anybody who came in from the local potato truck could audition when they had been going to school, studying to be actors, and it was important, and blah, blah, blah. So that escalated to them daring me to audition. I had no previous experience. I didn't even have a picture and a resume. But I did know one song from the show from hanging out with these guys because everybody was singing those songs at the time. Also, in those days, we used to, when you take your picture in, it would be a lithograph instead of the prints that you do nowadays.
Yeah.
And your resume would actually be printed on the back of your picture.
Oh, okay. Yeah. On the back of the headshot.
So they said, just go in, tell them that they're getting printed, so that's why you don't have one. They'll take a Polaroid of you and just go from there. So I did exactly as they said, went in, told them I didn't have a picture resume because they were being printed up, hadn't received them yet from the printer. They did. They shot a Polaroid, took some notes. I sang Greased Lightning from the show. And the producer came over and said, have you seen this show? I said, no. He handed me 2 house seats. He said, come see the show tonight because we're having you come back tomorrow for an audition. So I go back to my friends, who are all these serious actors from school, saying, hey, I just got this thing called a callback. I'm going back tomorrow and come see the show. Many of them were very unhappy because I had actually proved their point to how unfair it was.
Right. They're throwing their hats down and yelling.
Yeah. And then 5 auditions later, I am at a callback. It was me and a kid who was originally from New York to get the role. And Tommy Moore, who was the director of the play, and Patricia Birch, who was the choreographer of the play, were the people making the decision. So we're in Hollywood at this little studio. I'd go in, I'd do something, sing a song or do a scene. I'd walk out, he'd go in, do a song, do a scene, whatever. Back and forth several times. In the meantime, because of my business background, I actually bothered to get the equity contract and read it to see what it was I was getting into.
Mm-hmm.
And saw that there were these clauses. And so at some point, when I felt like, oh no, they're going to offer me this job, I asked Tommy Moore to step outside with me on the sidewalk and if we could talk for a minute. And I said, listen, I don't think I'm going to take this job because the contract says that it's a year contract. I said, I've never had to sing for a year, 5 nights a week, 6 nights a week, whatever. I said, I don't know if I can do 8 shows a week, if I'll even have a voice in a week. I said, I've not been trained this way. I don't know if I can do it. And I said, the other thing is that you've got this 3-month out clause, which means that even if I go do the show here in Hollywood and then go back to New York, which is what their plan was, I said, if you decide you don't like me, I can move my whole life. And in 3 months, you can say, forget it. And then I'm stuck.
Yeah.
I said, that, coming from a business background, I was like, this doesn't really make a lot of sense. I said, you see that other guy that I'm auditioning with? Acting is what he wants to do.
Mm-hmm.
He's good. You've obviously been keeping it. Give him the job. And the director looked at me. He said, are you serious? I said, yeah, I think it's the best thing for you, and it'll be the better decision for me. So he says, all right. So they did give that guy the job. I have no idea what happened to his career. But for the next 4 months, the casting office, which originally brought me in, would call me and ask me if I changed my mind. They said, we got a bus and truck show. You want to do that? We're going to be doing another show in Canada. You want to go do that? And I kept saying, no. But shortly thereafter, I got cast in a revival of Godspell, and then I did one of the first revivals of Rocky Horror Show, these plays.
Mm-hmm.
And then right after that, I got the show Cotton Candy, the movie that I was telling you about that was directed by Ron Howard. So then I went back to my parents. I said, listen, I think I need to change my major. How do you feel about that? And they were like, well, if you're going to be as dedicated as you have been to the other, we'll support you doing it. But, it's up to you. So between all those things that happened, I suddenly went, I think I'm going to be an actor. And so then I suddenly was in the acting game and I started getting work right away. And so I thought, okay, this is what I do now. And the voiceover portion of it really took place, even though I started in 83 doing voiceovers, but most of that time I was doing what they call it looping.
Mm-hmm.
Are you familiar with what that is?
It sounds vaguely familiar. Is it,
well, when they do a TV show, for instance, and let's say they're doing a big restaurant scene, and the restaurant's full of people. Well, when they're shooting the 2 stars, all those people that you see that they call atmosphere or extras,
mm-hmm.
they're all pantomiming as if they're having conversation. The cook putting up the plates up on the top for the waitresses to pick up all that stuff.
Right.
All the others, they're not saying anything because they don't want the sound to be interfering with being able to capture the sound of their lead players.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So
then in post-production, they put those pieces of footage up on the screen, and a post-director will say, okay, you see those 2 people that are sitting in the booth right behind our main players who seem to be having a conversation? They'll get you play the guy, and this girl, you'll play the woman, and they start talking as if you're them. Watch the lips. Try to make sure that your labials are the same, so that you're not doing an aw sound when their lips are together, things like that.
Right.
But have a conversation behind them so that we can, when we do the sound mix, it will appear as if it is happening like normal, like so they can blend it all together and still keep the lead players succinctly out front in the sound mix. So to hear them, they're not a muddle of all the noises that go on, and like in that restaurant.
Right. So it's like background ADR or something.
Exactly what it is. ADR is additional dialogue replacement.
Mm-hmm.
Is what that stands for. So yeah. So I started doing that, and then in 1999, I was diagnosed with brain cancer.
Oh no! I'm sorry to hear that.
Oh, I'm fine. Hey, listen, I've been a miracle as far as the doctors are concerned. The fact that I'm still here. When they originally diagnosed me, they said, maybe 3 years and get your shit together.
Oh, wow.
So here it is, 20 years later, and I'm still around.
Yeah.
So at that point is when I really started, because my on-camera career basically died immediately as soon as my hair started falling out.
Mm.
And also because I was known enough by the casting world, they all knew I got sick. And they don't want to hire somebody that might be sick.
Right.
So my agents, my commercial agents at the time said, they don't really know you in the voiceover world. Even though you've done ADR stuff, they don't know you in this other stuff. So we're going to put you into this. So I started auditioning for that, and that's when I was getting these jobs like Metal Gear.
Mm-hmm.
It was at a time when they weren't sure how much longer I was going to be on this planet. And that's where my voiceover work suddenly became a shift, because nobody cared whether you played a gay character. Nobody cared about any of that stuff. It was all just this new avenue. So I started getting to do voice commercials and some other things that besides the animation stuff. So suddenly my career took a turn.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, got into the whole business on a dare, literally.
Yeah, that's insane. How do you rectify being like the extremely irritable I guess like constantly pooping character in Metal Gear, and that being that could have been like the last role you were in? Like how do you rectify that?
Well, yeah, like any role that you do, you never know that it's really going to be the last role you do.
That's a good
There's
point.
a thing that I can't believe his name just jumped out of my brain. Rocky, Sylvester Stallone.
Oh, yeah.
A friend of mine happens to be a good friend with Sylvester, and she's pulled me aside today. She said, I think Sylvester just said one of the classic lines in her presence. She says, and I think you should know this. I said, what is it? He said, acting is the only career where you can be retired and not know it.
That's true.
And he's right. I mean, that's what I mean. You never know that that the job you've done is going to be your last job.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Well, and especially with the time delay too. It's like we don't see that movie. I mean, you could see it even like when Chris Farley passed. It's like he still had movies coming out for like 3 years.
Right, exactly. So because of post-production time and all those other things, from an audience standpoint, you don't know that they're not going to be back. And from a career standpoint, you don't know that they're just going to stop hiring you. I mean, I certainly never expected to get brain cancer, and then suddenly my on-camera career, which had really been starting to get a really good momentum through the 90s, I was suddenly getting a lot of little movies of the week, things like that. I thought, that's going to build again from what I had done in the 80s, in the early 80s, was coming back, feeling strong, getting really good auditions, and then I get hit with brain cancer. It's like, well, I guess that's not going to happen.
Yeah,
so you don't know.
Crazy. Exactly, yeah.
And you just kind of take each job on its own merit, and hopefully you enjoy it while you're doing it. And I always have. I mean, I've loved the world of being an actor. Has been so exciting to me. But you take each one, like I said, on its own merit. You enjoy it while you're doing it, and then when it's done, you got to go, well, I hope there's more to come. But if there's not, that might have been my 15 minutes.
Well, yeah, and I think it's interesting. My wife and I actually get into these conversations quite a bit because she's an engineer and I do freelance film work when I'm not doing podcast or whatever.
Right.
And she's the kind of person who really, really needs to know that something is going to remain the way that it is forever. Like somebody who needs stability, I guess.
Yeah, she's a sound engineer. Like if she was out here in Hollywood, I know plenty of those people over the years, and they're like, once May comes around and suddenly you were waiting to find out if your show's picked up or not, and if it doesn't get picked up, you're out looking for work again.
Yeah, exactly. And so I keep telling her, I'm like, well, like sometimes you just got to kind of let it come how it's going to come and play the cards the way they lay,
Yeah, I mean, hopefully you make some good contacts along the way, or the people like working with you, and so that's why they want to hire you again.
Right. Do you have a favorite role that you've played over the years? Is there anything that jumps out that you're like, oh man, if I could go back and do it again?
Well, I'd say that one of the fun roles I got to play was in a silly little film called Dusting Cliff 7.
Okay.
And I played this hero character with another nice actress, and it just he's like, he's a hero, but like one of the hero characters I played in a movie called Metal Beast was, even in that film, I get shot and I still come back at the end and try to save the girl. So those sort of things are fun to get to do. You're playing these fantasy heroes and, strength that you probably don't have in your real life.
Right. It looks like Dustin Cliff 7 came out in like 97. So was that right before the brain cancer stuff had happened?
Yes, exactly.
Gotcha.
Exactly. As a matter of fact, one of my fond memories from doing that show is just how people mentally think about things. One of the crew people brought their son to the set one day because we were out in the desert shooting.
Mm-hmm.
And he came up to me and said, "What is this called?" I said, "Oh, it's called Dustin Cliff 7. He goes, "Really? Were you in the first 6?
That's awesome.
And I said, "No, this is the first one. Dustin Cliff 7 is not the episode number. It has to do with the name of the hill that we're trying to destroy."
Yeah, that's crazy.
But, just the mentality of thinking, oh, well, if there's a 7 on it, there must be other episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Just cracked me up. This poor little kid. I thought, wow, have we changed our ideas of how things work?
Do you find yourself still kind of I guess passionate and kind of looking for like dream projects now, or do you find yourself kind of motivated by other things these days? What gets you excited whenever you kind of get up in the morning and go? What are you up to?
Well, I'm kind of a handyman. I do a bit of everything, or what some people would call a Renaissance guy.
Nice.
When I can do everything from sing a song, play a guitar, or fix a pipe under your sink.
That's awesome.
Certainly when I wake up, there's always, as I mentioned, I love acting so much. I love the storytelling aspect of it, that my hope springs eternal that some other job is going to come along and I'm going to get to do that, whatever that is, and enjoy that experience because I love it so much. But like I said, if I've been retired and I just don't know it, well, then I'm going to look back on the things that I did get to do very fondly because I enjoyed all of them. They were all fun. I really have no regrets for any of the jobs I took. Certainly sometimes you look back and you go, gee, I wonder if I hadn't taken that gay character, if I had gone to Broadway, what would my career look like? There's no way to know, but you can kind of just fantasize about, could it have been different? Mm-hmm. But, that you can't really look back on those things, on those choices that you made as mistakes because you took them. And like I said, I loved playing it. Doing that gay character, as silly as it was, getting to work with Sammy Davis Jr. was such a treat. Or Sherry North, or a number of these people, Marty Balsam, some of these people that I got to meet on this show, talking to them and chatting with them about their lives and seeing some of this stuff. Don Rickles, for instance, getting called, I forget what nickname he called me. It was not to be funny, making fun of me. Right. But just meeting with him and having those experiences in your life, you just go, wow, this is so cool that my life got to have that. I've gotten to meet a lot of people. I got to meet Clint Eastwood over the years and a whole bunch of other people. Doing a play with the girl who'd been on television on That's Amazing and stuff like that, Kathy Lee Crosby. Mm-hmm. She was a delight, and we got to be very good friends for a long time. And those experiences wouldn't have come any other way. When I'm sitting in a limousine across the seat from Clint Eastwood and going, I'm sitting with Clint Eastwood.
Yeah. Yeah. How did I get here? Like, what did I do to get here?
What did I do? This is so amazing. Mm-hmm. I'm having a conversation. I'm not doing a fan thing going, hey, will you tell me about the spaghetti westerns or any of that stuff, but just having normal conversations. Just go, how lucky am I that this could be my life for whatever period this is going to be? These are great memories to hold on to.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it's just one of those things too where it's like, for the most part, and I don't know if you're this way, but I definitely find myself being this way. For the most part, I find myself just like so kind of like anxious and kind of curious about like, what do I need to do next? And like, what am I forgetting about? And blah, 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 that I don't really ever think about that kind of stuff until after it's over. And then you're like, oh man, I should have been in the moment a
you
little
can
bit
certainly
more.
not realize how cool it is in the moment. I agree with that, absolutely. Sometimes it is until I look back and go, shit, I was sitting in a car with this guy. But at the moment, it just felt normal because I was there for an event, and so was he.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But actually, one of my favorite moments is, do you know the actor Cliff Robertson?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, I was at an event, and again, I was in a limousine with Cliff, and he's telling me the stories about, you know, he got blackballed for a long period of time. He did that famous movie called Charlie,
Mm-hmm.
and he was blackballed by 20th Century Fox because he was the first person to expose the double bookkeeping books that were going on, where they were claiming, the studio was claiming it wasn't making any money on something when actors were supposed to get these back end deals.
Yeah.
And so he exposed it, brought them to court, won his court case, but then he was blackballed by most major studios. They wouldn't hire him because they were afraid of him.
That's crazy.
And it took a long time for him to get back into even television, where they were allowing him, even though he was a great actor, been nominated for Academy Award, all this stuff. They were like, no, he might tell on us. So, but getting to sit with him in a limousine and him recounting what had really gone on to me was really remarkable. To talk to him, because I admired his work. He was an exceptional actor.
Yeah.
But, and getting to have that conversation in my life, knowing most people are never going to get to have that. And I'm sitting here talking with the guy.
Right. Well, and most of our listeners too will be familiar with Cliff, specifically from, and this is super goofy, so I'm sorry, but specifically from his appearance in Escape from L.A., which we covered for the show.
Oh, right.
And I know he plays Uncle Ben in the 3 Spider-Man films that Sam Raimi put out.
Right.
So, but his list is wild. I mean, he's been in everything from Twilight Zone to playing like JFK and Buzz Aldrin and various things. Like, he's pretty prolific.
Yeah, he's a very good actor. He's really good. And if you ever get a chance to see Charlie, if you haven't, it came from a play called Flowers for Algernon.
Oh, yeah.
And he plays a person with mental retardation and stuff like that, really struggling.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like Butterflies Are Free. It's much more dramatic. And it's really, that's one of the films that he got nominated for. It's wonderful work.
Mm-hmm.
And so, again, like I say, to sit and know, hey, I'm talking to this guy like we're friends, and having a very open conversation about what happened in his life, what the studio did to him, and things like that. And in that moment, because of who he was, I did have a moment of going, I'm talking to this guy. But certainly in retrospect, it even had more impact to go, man, I can't believe that he shared that stuff with me then,
Yeah,
so I think that's the way it is for all of us. Sometimes you don't take the moment to really recognize what you were getting to experience in that moment because you're in it.
Right.
But yeah, when you look back, sometimes you just go, man, my life has been pretty damn cool. Or I had some amazing moments in my life that others will never get to have, but how exciting that you got to have it,
For sure. Yeah, and I swear I'm not trying to be super goofy or sentimental, but I think for a lot of the folks listening to this show, and I know for myself and my co-hosts and everybody who works on this show, we've been doing this show, I think it'll be 4 years in September, which is crazy.
Wow, congratulations.
Thanks.
That's a big feat. A lot of people don't stick with it. They start something and it kind of loses its momentum. The fact that you've been able to sustain yourself and keep an audience, I think that's pretty great. So congratulations to you.
Yeah, and it's led, I think specifically this year, kind of end of last year, is when sort of this interview aspect of it kind of started to take on a very real life and kind of snowball from, okay, well, we got one person to, oh wait, now we got two and three and more and more and more. And
Good
so I
for
think
you.
even just talking to you and being able to share this conversation that we're having with other people,
Yeah.
be them in New Zealand or the United Kingdom or Canada or the US. I mean, I think in a weird way, we're kind of making that moment right now for some
Yeah.
people. So I think it's really
Absolutely.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool because you don't realize how much you might be affecting other people or what impact it has or whether it's even important to them or not. But it is to some, and you got to participate in that and
Yeah,
making
well,
that
and
available to them.
you as well. So thank you so much for taking the time to just, I don't know, hop on a call and just kind of reminisce for a little bit. And hopefully this was as fun for you as it was
Oh
for me.
yeah, sure. No, I was very happy to talk to you. Be happy to talk to you anytime you like. Sorry that
Very
we've
nice.
had some time issues, but
Oh, it happens. It happens. I've trust me, we've had conversations with people like 14-hour difference from us
oh gosh, I know.
across
I
the
have a friend
planet.
who's
So.
9 hours ahead of me in Italy right now, and it's like trying to just time our conversations, even to text one another, has been difficult.
Yeah, my wife and I got engaged in Italy because that's where my grandparents are from, and I even just trying to call her parents that night was kind of a little bit of a game of tag. So
Oh yeah, yeah,
it's
that
wild.
time difference. Well, and also, I mean, you got a little bit less because you're what you said. Central time is where you are.
Yeah.
So it's 7 hours difference for you, but it's still a lot.
Right.
You
Yeah, I mean
know,
it's a work day.
Yeah, you got to do the math.
Dean, I wanted to ask you before we let you go, is there anything that you've got coming up that folks should check out? Or, I mean, do you have anywhere that you want to point people? I mean, if we've got an audience with their ear to you right now, what do you want them to take away from this?
Well, I don't have anything right now. I'm trying to work on some things to see if I can create some content because there's a couple of projects that I'm fond of that I have, but they're not at any point to announce because they're not anywhere for anybody to go look at them.
Okay.
But yeah, you know what I'll do is I'll send you a text or an email sometime if something's up and let you know about it. And then if you want to chat again, we can.
That sounds great. Yeah, and
Okay.
anything that you want to pass over our way, I definitely don't mind sharing that with folks on social media or even covering it on an episode of the show. So
Yeah, thank you. Well, everybody can find me on Facebook, so they're welcome to do that. And I'm not yet an Instagram and Snapchat thing. I think people are kind of moving away from Facebook in a certain way, but that happens to be where I am.
Right.
But yeah,
Perfect.
they're welcome to friend me there. I'm happy to take on new friends, and they're welcome to do that. Well, thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure talking to you, and I wish you a lot more years of success, and congratulations to you and your wife, of course, and tell her to keep her spirit up. I mean, yeah, it might feel redundant after a while, but, if she's got a job that's working, God bless her.
Right. Well, thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day, and we'll definitely be in touch. So I appreciate it, and thanks.
You bet. Take good care.